I think it's pretty amazing to be in a place as I am this morning and wake up to find a newspaper at my door, the International Herald Tribune, and it is featuring smart cities and our pursuit of livability and sustainability. I think FISITA should be congratulated for being able to influence the newspaper in that regard because the timing is just perfect. As mentioned, I am the Deputy Director for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and that organization is responsible for the long-range planning and investment decisions for transportation. We do a lot of policy work, but we also are involved quite tremendously in the actual funding of transportation. So one of the things I'll be focusing on today is how we're going to be shifting some of our priorities relative to the issue of making a more sustainable community in the Bay Area. I'm going to focus today on how the personal mobility of our residents is being influenced by the growth of our region and how our planning and transportation investment decisions are going to are now focusing on residential growth and job growth in the region's urban core will influence future mobility. And I'm going to conclude with a few thoughts about the role of the automotive industry with regard to regional planning. Just a little bit of background for you. The Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, comprises 9 counties. It is the world's 19th largest economy, and we're located in the state of California, which is the world's 5th largest economy. We are happy to say that we're, as noted last night in the presentation from Professor Kenworthy, that we are considered a mega city, but a hybrid city, in that we have an urban core with 3 major cities, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. And those particular cities have grown in their population by about 40% since 1970. The population of the next 7 largest cities has grown by over 100% since 1970. So the inner core of the region is growing very rapidly. The region has an extensive transportation network, but we also have quite an institutional challenge in the fact that we have 100 separate cities within our region, all of whom have responsibility for land use decisions. So patching together regional strategy is very difficult in that particular environment. We have about 7 million residents today. Our population is expected to grow by about 22% to the year 2035. Jobs also to increase considerably. We are the home of the Silicon Valley, even though all economic activity has been seeing a decline recently. We are starting to recover pretty rapidly given the nature of the economy in the Bay Area being driven by technology. We expect auto trips to increase by 27% and transit trips by 43%. But if you note the lion's share, the most of that trip making is going to continue to be driven, if we do nothing differently, from trips from out of the region. Note at the bottom of this graph, we have some transit capacity we intend to provide to increase in the region, but our road capacity has basically reached its limits. We will not be able to extend beyond more than about 5% additional road capacity, and much of that is going to be in the form of carpool lanes and high occupancy toll lanes. Now, as is the case in most metro areas in the country, in the United States, our land use patterns over the past 40 years have favored residential growth in the outer region, and that is farther and farther from the urban core, so that incommuting from this outer region continues to overtax the transportation system. A note here on the right, the map indicates that over the next 25 years, the growth in outer region travel into the inner Bay Area is intended to grow very considerably, again, if we do nothing to change that. We have obviously increasing congestion, but to note that half of our congestion is related to the impacts of accidents and incidents that are unplanned. So a big portion of our work here has to do with how to deal with increases in delay of travel for individuals, and a lot of that has to do with good incident clearance and avoidance, and that obviously will have something to do with the automotive industry. We've made major investments in our transit network. Currently, we're ranked second among the major metropolitan regions in the U.S. in terms of the percent of all work trips made by transit. However, ridership growth for transit has leveled off, and transit represents only 5% of all trips taken. It's about 12% of all work trips, but when you put all trips together, it's only at 5%. At the same time, we're seeing that the share of all trips taken alone by car is declining in favor of shared rides and walking and biking. And so that is a trend we're seeing, and we project to see that continue over the next several years. I think another important trend, especially as we consider what the future will bring, is the reduction in the number of auto miles driven by persons aged 21 to 30. We've done quite a bit of demographic work in our region on this particular segment of the population to better understand, since we're looking at long-term planning, what we should be preparing ourselves for. And of course, this generation, not unusual, is that they are very environmentally conscious. They have a rapidly growing interest in living in an urban and networked environment. And they're more likely to have jobs that they can work from home, and they're more willing to use transit and shared rides coordinated through their social networks. So that is a trend that we're seeing as well. I noted an important issue for our urban area, as well as many throughout the United States, is the concern about the high cost of transportation, but also transportation as it relates to housing costs. For the past 25 years, Bay Area residents continue to endure longer and longer commutes in exchange for getting lower housing costs in the outer part of the region. But the region has reached the tipping point, really, on this economic scale, where the cost of travel time delays, when you measure that in terms of lost productivity and fuel costs, when combined with housing costs, has now made it as expensive to live in the outer region as it is to live in the urban core. And so that's a very important trend that is occurring. People who now live in the region's outer communities often pay more in increased transportation costs than they might be saving on lower housing costs. And that, again, that has a lot to do with the delays that they are experiencing and fuel costs. For all Bay Area households, income levels, the average combined costs, this is on the right, of transportation and housing is roughly 37%. But for low income and moderate income families and households, we have reached a point that the figure exceeds 51% of their household budgets in the combination of housing and transportation. Now, that is a very big concern in an economy, and many economies throughout the world, where we need to have strategies that will house our workforce at all income levels for the types of economic objectives that our region has. And we're not doing a very good job of that with these kinds of numbers. Personal mobility is definitely at risk when we have this situation, and our region basically is not sustainable. I'd note also that the environmental impact and the burden of dispersed development has also reached the tipping point for us in the Bay Area. This slide just shows that in relative terms, the transportation sector contributes nearly 40% of human-caused carbon emissions in the Bay Area. This compares to a worldwide figure of 14%. Now, I know it's very difficult to compare at that level, but that's a very important target for us to be working from. And in the Bay Area, as in many metro areas in California, autos and light-duty trucks represent 75% of the transportation sector contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. And this has created a very important focus for the state of California. California, as I know, tries to keep up more with the Europeans than it does other parts of the US in terms of our very strict efforts to work towards mitigating climate change. We have a very strong set of policies in our state that actually require the federal government to move a little bit out of the way for us to move forward on some of our more important and strict objectives. So California law today is looking at how to seriously reduce the impact from the transportation sector for issues of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. To address the challenge, the state has decided to set a very strong target of reducing on an annual basis 58 million metric tons per year for per year by the year 2025. Now, 65% of this reduction is going to come from cleaner vehicles. Very strong regulation in California related to that. Cleaner fuels will represent another 25%. My focus today will be really more on the last 10%, and that has to do with state law that now requires metropolitan regions to take a very hard look on the issues of land use related and personal mobility options related to urban areas. So under this legislation, every metropolitan region in California, and there are 18 of us, with a population over 1 million, are required to establish a sustainable community strategy. It requires us to house all the region's population at all income levels within the region, meaning that we want to mitigate the increase in the number of people commuting in, living outside the region and coming into the region for work. We're going to focus development in the existing urban footprint, and it requires us for the first time to really align our transportation investments, housing growth, and land use planning. So I mentioned that we are a regional planning organization, and so one of the things we have to do is every 4 years is adopt a long-range transportation plan. And the last one that we have adopted took very seriously the issue of improving personal mobility. And as it relates to our objectives, we were setting a target for ourselves to reduce annual vehicle hours of delay per person by 25%. That is the red bar. That would be our target from where we are today in blue. And if we did nothing, our trend would take us to a point of over 140% increase in travel delay. We looked at several strategies. The first was to build more, whether it's roads or transit infrastructure and the like. And if we accounted for all of those plans over the next 25 years, what you see is that that infrastructure investment would make a very minor dent in the travel delay. The next thing we looked at was system management, which is basically all about using your existing built infrastructure, but managing it more effectively. And that would get us halfway to our goal, but would still exceed our current levels by 45%. What we've determined through this analysis is that the only way we could achieve a target of 25% reduction in travel delay was to seriously consider changes in land use and pricing of the transportation system. And so we are turning our attention very seriously to that particular set of strategies. So I'm going to take you through just a few of those that we're focusing on right now. First of all, we are going to continue to heavily invest in making more efficient use of the existing transportation network, both to improve mobility for in the inner urban area as well as residents of the outer region. Because we do know that land use changes and intensification of residential and job location in the Bay Area will take a few decades to achieve. We, in the meantime, need to manage our system better. We'll focus on active traffic and transit management, demand management, as well as more rapid incident clearance. As you recall, I did say that 50% of our problem is due to incidents, and so we're going to be working very heavily on that. But it does require us to establish an information system that collects, manages, and reports information in real time. And that is a very important tool that we have a long way to get. More investment needs to be made in that regard. The public sector's made a significant financial investment to install detection systems throughout the region. But the real catalyst, we believe, for personal mobility will be the growth in the extent of the sensor technologies that are being deployed by the private sector, both in the auto industry as well as communications and other sectors are installing a lot of technology that we need to have a better sense of what's available and how best to make use of it. The second major strategy is to focus our land use. And this is a very ambitious set of objectives, but one that we do believe is going to be required to make the changes that we'd like to see in personal mobility. The first, basically, we need to focus our land use. Our intention is to provide 70% of the growth, focus that growth in 3% of the land area of the Bay Area. What you see on this slide is the map is basically an intensification of land use in major areas like San Francisco, Santa Clara, which is where San Jose is, and Oakland, and a few key job locations throughout the region. It'll be heavily supported by a transit network, and again, we need to be sure that we provide housing for all income levels. We are investing at this point and will continue to invest in the transition of current neighborhoods. We talked a lot about this yesterday, last evening. Current neighborhoods near transit to make them, create them more transit-oriented communities. We are taking funding that we would traditionally have invested in infrastructure or other tools on the system and funding serious planning at the local level for those cities who have to take the lead for us in providing opportunities for transit-oriented development. That is a very rare thing in terms of what is happening in other parts of the country, but it is a trend that we need to continue to move towards. We're making transit a more effective travel choice by increasing the speed and frequency of bus services on the major arterials, and we need to compete with the auto in terms of being able to be more user-friendly with respect to being able to provide better options. And finally, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time, as you can see in these conceptual drawings, of using a good portion of our land, shifting from the use of land by cars to the use of land for pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities. And this is not to add and take away from land uses like the housing or retail or commercial, but to build right within the current right-of-way. So the real impact is we will be reducing the space available to cars and to parking. As mentioned yesterday at last evening's conversation, the whole idea of, well, where will these people go if they're no longer on the streets? I would say that we also have had very interesting experience in the Bay Area when we have shut down portions of the transportation network. Things do tend to even out. It's very hard to know where people are going, but it is true that we do not see the impacts as negatively as assumed before making those decisions, and have been able to guard against that problem. So we know that this will have an enduring impact, but one that we know we also need to move towards. We know personal mobility is all about choices, so the more we can invest in choices, the better. We know that we need to provide those choices and information about them in real time, and that is going to be very important for us. I note here that there is a significant effort to do more bike sharing and car sharing in the Bay Area. And what's very interesting, I think, and a trend that I'm sure we're seeing worldwide, is as long as we make the information available, the innovation of individuals designing their own applications on their smartphones is really overtaking government's ability to provide information systems. That may be hard for folks who spend a lot of time building like a 511 traveler information system, which is a single phone system for the Bay Area for all travel. But we are seeing a transition moving in that direction where people want access to the information and they'll take it from there. And we're finding some very interesting applications being developed. And finally, what we are also very involved in at this point is determining the best pricing and payment systems that should be implemented in the Bay Area. And again, this has a lot of impact on thinking, I hope, in terms of the automotive industry and how the electronics and the communication networks that are developed by the automotive industry can help us in this regard. We need to send users of the transportation system clear price signals when we need to have them make certain decisions that are beneficial not only to their travel time, but also to the system at large. And I think it's very important that we also have the responsibility to simplify those payment systems. In our region, we have over 15 transit agencies. We have 8 toll bridges, 3 toll authorities, and we're now moving into hot lanes, high occupancy toll lanes. What we've been able to do in our region, and it has taken many years to get there, but we have simplified payment for transit by consolidating the entire transit fare system into one smart card. So no matter where you are in the region, if you have the Clipper card, you can use any of the systems that are in the Bay Area. And we also have a single toll collection system. Those platforms are very important to make sure that people do not get overly confused and make it too complicated for them to make the right decision at the right time. If they have to move from driving to transit, they should be able to do so very simply. We are also looking to the Clipper smart card system and other payment systems to get us into parking and bike sharing and car sharing access as their payment system for those modes as well. I'd also just maybe close on this one by noting that we're really in the business right now of trying to implement as much as we can on a regional basis, trying to deploy individual technologies and then weaving them together later is a very complicated proposition. So, for example, we are looking at new parking systems, smart parking systems in San Francisco that will allow users of various electronic means of information gathering to know which places in San Francisco have parking available. So if where they want to go, there's no place to park, they can then transition and make a different decision. They also will be given price signals in terms of certain times of day, certain congestion levels for parking. There will be a differential rate and variable pricing. That's being done in San Francisco. If successful, we will move to deployment region-wide. And so it's a very important stage in our process of working into the future. So just a couple of notes to conclude. Where's the role of the automobile in all of this? As we noted, the professor mentioned this morning, you know, we need to focus on people and what people need in terms of their choices. But there's a lot that the automotive industry can do to help us make those personal choices more useful to the individual. Certainly the connected vehicles and the information that is generated out of all of the sensor capability of vehicles is going to be very key. The United States has been really struggling with how to incorporate those opportunities with the built infrastructure for the United States. Very expensive for us to put in sensor technology, readers, and others to collect information from the automobiles. We think there are better ways to do that, and we need to be creative about it. But we need the government, as well as the auto industry, need to work together on that. With respect to cooperative data sharing, a lot of concern about data collected through the automobile and who should have access to it. If we are able to find a way to make that more ubiquitously available to the government, but also directly to individuals, I think we'll make a huge strides to improve personal mobility, because some of the best sensor capability is coming from vehicles, not only automobiles, but other vehicles, whether bicycles and the like, that we really need to find a way to capture the information and turn it around in a useful form. And finally, vehicle design. We talked a little bit about that last evening. I do think it's very important for us to not necessarily take the leap to completely autonomous vehicles and vehicles that drive on their own, but the interim, we need to have a real important strategy to design vehicles that are more useful to the new types of transitory development that is occurring, whether it be by the size of the vehicle, making them more friendly in terms of climate, but also to move us into an opportunity for us to be much more responsive to the individual's needs. And I will conclude with that, and I look forward to the discussion later today. Thank you.